In April this year, during the crash, I invested €140,000 in ETFs. In this video, a new update on how those ETFs are doing. Every month, we give an update on our channel investors about both investing in ETFs and in stocks. With our own stocks, with our own money. Welcome to Happy Investors. My name is Jorik Vermeulen, founder, entrepreneur, and investor, and with Happy Investors, where I have been investing in both ETFs and stocks for over 10 years, we help people invest smartly and simply for the long term, of course. We're going to talk about ETFs at DEGIRO with some interesting developments. We'll also discuss the ETF portfolio at MEXEM. Both accounts have recently switched over to MEXEM. If you don't have an account yet, I would recommend going with MEXEM. That's not personal advice. It's just that, in general, that's the cheaper broker. And in a moment, we're going to talk about some interesting ETFs, including video gaming, uranium, and also Greece. Greece doesn't resonate with everyone as a theme. However, I can assure you, I have a lot of money invested in it and I'm quite happy with it. I'll explain to you in this video why, but first, a little bit about money. And here we see one of the DEGIRO accounts, almost 100K. In a moment, I'll show you a few more, all with almost 100K or a bit more. I also have investments myself in a kind of Dutch software company. I also have other types of investments. I have my own company with a business valuation. That's starting to add up. All very nice and fun. I became financially free at a young age. I can assure you of one thing, money doesn't make you happy. It's just nice to have a bit of financial freedom. What's much more important is to follow your passion. Doing what you enjoy, things like that. And if you ask older people about it, no one gives the advice that you should work super hard just to make a lot of money. That was a mistake I made myself, but that's just my fanaticism, my passion for, well, building progress is something I enjoy. Entrepreneurship, that's what it comes down to, and as a result, I can also make more and more money. So I'm investing in both stocks and ETFs. And this video is just an update about the ETF portfolio, not about stocks. By the way, this is our joint account together with my girlfriend. And by the way, you can see some stocks here. Some of them are doing terribly, as you can see, almost minus 100%. On my other account, my own portfolio, I have stocks. Some are doing really well, some are doing a bit less well. But the lesson is always the same, because I keep repeating, they can go down a maximum of minus 100%. If you don't use debt, you can only lose up to minus 100%, and they can go up tenfold or even more. So everything depends on long-term investing. And also, the longer you invest, the greater the effect of compound interest. In other words, returns on returns. One thing is much more important, just do what you really love, and that's mainly about quality. Having time for your relationships, for your passion, things like that. Contributing to something bigger than yourself. That really gives you energy in the long run, and not just being filthy rich. I mean, having plenty of money is nice, but that's really all there is to it. What we've now launched at Happy Investors is the concept of win-win investing, where you can have your money invested passively, but still with 100% control from your own investment account. No one else can access your money. I've made a detailed video about this, including our proven historical returns. Our dividend portfolio has had a proven historical return of over 17% on average per year since 2021. Our growth portfolio has even achieved more than 100% over the past 3 years. But there is a nuance to this. That will definitely go down a bit due to some poorer investments in recent months. And hopefully, of course, we'll try to bring it back up again. Now, you can basically just copy our portfolio. You yourself give permission for each transaction, yes or no. And on this page about win-win investing on our website, you'll find more information. However, we only charge a performance fee on the returns achieved. And in bad years, we charge 0% fee. This is unique in the Netherlands. No one else does this. It is also higher risk, because if we fail, we don't make any money. That's really what it comes down to. So we only get rewarded if we consistently achieve higher returns than you. You can also view our detailed performance overviews. In those, you can clearly see the returns of all the dividend recommendations we've made on our paid platform, Happy Investors Community. 100% traceable. And from now on, we will also report on all new stocks. I just won't give it a name yet, because that wouldn't be fair to our paying members. So, we've recently published Dividend Stock Uni. I'm really curious to see how it will perform. And for July, so in a few days, I already have another great new dividend stock lined up. The growth stocks are also performing excellently. We've achieved very high returns on several stocks. But yeah, past results, unfortunately, how should I put it, are no guarantee for the future. That's how it goes with ETF investing as well. Even if you diversify. Yes, investing carries risks of losing money, and the only real way to achieve higher returns is by investing differently from the market average. Two things. Either by simply investing in a low-cost index fund or ETF. So just buy the all-world ETF or buy the S&P 500 ETF, and you'll get an average return. Do this every month. Add money every quarter or every month. Especially when the market drops, buy a lot more. And that's the simple formula. Do you want to achieve a slightly higher return, potentially, and be a bit more active with it? Then you can invest in thematic ETFs, or you can let us do it for you with the win-win investing concept. I'm going to explain to you, using these thematic ETFs, what the results are, why we bought them, and why I think they could be interesting for the future. In this video, I'll show you all my portfolios that contain ETFs, 2 at DEGIRO and 2 at MEXEM. First, a quick recap. It might be the first time you're following our channel. Every month, we already give an update on our investment portfolio. And since the summer of 2024, I mentioned that things were starting to get a bit high in terms of valuations. Then, in March 2025, I sold a lot of positions, as you can see. And when did the crash happen? Well, very coincidentally, in April, thanks to Mr. Trump. I didn't see that coming. I just thought, I'll keep a lot of cash in my portfolio. I sold a lot, as you can see, because valuations were getting really high. Well, I've been doing this for more than 10 years now, and with a lot of trial and error, I've made plenty of mistakes. So it's really not something that just happens overnight. This timing was pure luck anyway. No one is pretending that I have a crystal ball here. The only thing I can show is that a month later, prices had dropped significantly, and luckily I started buying again. Not on a massive scale, but still quite a lot. And I did that in ETFs, so I also had a lot of stocks here, which I sold all of them. By the way, there was also a loser among them, Teladoc Health. Yeah, that's the downside of risky investing. But this portfolio is ours together. Well, it's not just me. So if I lose money, who cares? I've done that plenty of times before. Only, a joint account means someone else also has a stake in it. Yeah, and then I tend to invest more passively or defensively, with lower risk. And I did that through thematic ETFs. So this portfolio is interesting for you to follow. Subscribe to our channel. Every month, we give an update about thematic ETFs. If you want to invest with lower risk, the ETFs I bought are, as you can see here, the first one on April 14th, then April 23rd, then in May, and most recently from the past month. I'll set it to show the past month. Bought the extra ETF, bought more of the Spain ETF, and also added the Greece ETF, 2 thematic ETFs that look fundamentally very interesting. I've also made several videos about that, and it doesn't resonate with everyone, Navy especially. Greece might sound boring, but you have to spot opportunities, and that really requires a bit more digging than just the initial reaction of, oh, Greece, that's not interesting. Investment? Oh, I'll pass. No, you have to dig deeper. What are the consequences of the consequences, and why is that interesting? So, we're going to take a look at the portfolio. At the moment, fortunately, it's still looking good. Yeah, you can still see a few small positions with really tiny amounts. I had the Invesco QQQ for a very long time already, just that one. I bought the other QQQ with the ticker EQQB on the European exchange. This is the downside to Vero, which I actually only realized later. Or maybe it's just changed more overall, but those conversion fees from DEGIRO have definitely gone up. I've explained a lot about this, that you really need to watch out for those conversion fees. So if you buy in euros at DEGIRO, there's nothing to worry about. It's relatively cheap, but if you buy in other currencies, then it gets expensive. In that case, I would choose MEXC. Personally, I have a lot invested in US stocks. That saves me hundreds of euros a year in transaction fees, so your returns end up being higher. But as long as you invest in euros at DEGIRO, no problem at all, it's totally fine. Keep doing that. There are some other downsides to DEGIRO, just as a side note, but also a lot of advantages, like the fact that it just works super easily. Here we see the largest positions, and recently I also bought more of the Greece ETF, and the Invesco QQQ is also doing quite well. I actually bought that one almost right at the dip in April. Yeah, I actually expected it to drop even further, but there you go. You should never try to time the market perfectly, so I got in anyway, and with success. Luckily. I bought more oil and gas a bit later, because it performed really well last week. But that was based on the escalation in Iran and Israel, and now that seems to be okay again, so the ETF is dropping a little bit. I made a separate video about the Queen China Internet ETF. It's a super interesting ETF when it comes to valuation, with a lot of potential growth for the future. I've also had semiconductor for a long time, but as you can see, it's only a small holding with little value, so it doesn't really matter in this portfolio at the moment. I'm simply keeping it just to keep an eye on it, in case the valuation becomes attractive again. And the Spain ETF, I've talked about that several times as well, about interesting valuations. There are. In the top 3 are Santander and a cheap, large bank, Iberdrola with solar energy, that kind of thing. That one has dropped a little recently. If we take a look at Greece, for example, I think it's a fun theme to keep repeating. Again today, there's been a significant increase. It's doing really well, I have to say. There are several different tickers, though. You have the US version with the ticker CC, and here we're talking about GRE. The ticker, and with these kinds of things, we're not going to go into fundamentals, because this is purely an overview of the ETFs, and I've already made several videos about the fundamental analysis of these kinds of investments. But if you just look at the returns, for example from this ETF, you wouldn't expect it to be able to achieve such high returns. So in 2023, it achieved a return of 35%. If we look at 2024 to 2025, that's about a 15% return, which is still excellent. And just this year, in the first half alone, already a 32% return. Well, it's probably going to cool off a bit now, because the momentum is really strong at the moment and at some point people will start taking profits again. So ultimately, the key everywhere is to invest for the long term, because if you had been in since 2023, you would have simply doubled your money. And that's in just 2.5 years. Well, that means a very high return. This ETF can still grow much further, as you can see, and this is purely a price chart, but it's also about the valuation. So since 2023, a 100% return. Excellent, but at some point it will return to the all-time high. Then you would still have a 7-fold return from the current level. I'm not claiming it will reach the 2007 price level, but fundamentally it does look interesting, so, simply put, a low price. Future growth probably means more interesting returns. And as far as I'm concerned, Greece is more interesting than, for example, the great S&P 500 ETF. But well, time will tell. Other ETFs are stagnating a bit after a big price increase, like the Invesco QQQ. The China Internet ETF looks fundamentally very interesting. It's actually also starting to stabilize a bit. I did expect it to keep rising, but the momentum has dropped off a little. If you look at it compared to the peak, it has dropped a lot. The history is longer because here we have the KWB as an example. That's the European version with euro currency. But if we take the original ticker QEB, then we see a longer history, namely up to 2013. Yeah, and you can also see here a long period from 2014 to even 2017. So for 3 years, the ETF basically just moved sideways. So for 3 years, you simply had no returns at all. If you subtract inflation, you're actually at a loss. While in the meantime, I'll just take a random example, you could have had 30% in a short period, and this is what I do with thematic ETFs. I anticipate lower prices with future growth based on a number of factors. Of course, part of it is luck, and part of it isn't. And every now and then, you see that valuation shoot up quickly, and then you can take some profit, and then just patiently wait again until the momentum fades. The prices drop a bit again, sometimes even a lot, like with a minus 40% correction, for example. And then you get back in. And in the long run, that way you create an ETF portfolio with profit and more profit. So simply by being a bit more active, you can increase your returns. And by a bit more active, I don't mean every week. I do keep an eye on it daily, but I don't buy or sell every week, more like every quarter, for example. Taking an action or not, yes, that goes against the idea of trading as little as possible to keep your transaction costs as low as possible. However, if you know what you're doing, just like with cycling, you can take the corners faster and faster. It's just important not to go too fast, because then you'll crash out of the turn. So, a number of ETFs are interesting. The one that's become less interesting at the moment is the oil ETF. That one is starting to drop a bit now. Actually, it's quite a significant price drop, and if we're unlucky, the ETF could fall a lot further from this level. Maybe even by around minus 15% until it finds some kind of support level again. but all in all, oil is linked to energy. I also have uranium in my portfolio with high profits. I'll show you that in a moment. And of course, uranium is also linked to energy because of the artificial intelligence hype. And energy is just interesting for the future. I'm also following the Sustainable ETF, the Sustainable Energy ETF, iShares Global Clean Energy. I've been following it for a while, it's starting to pick up again, but I think we still need to be patient. There are some developments coming out of America that aren't favorable for sustainable energy. I hope Trump will be gone in the long run. Then everyone will be happy, including the planet. Because we really need to do a lot more when it comes to sustainability. And I'm not some nature guru or anything, but just take a look at that series on Disney Plus, for example. It's called Ocean, and you'll be shocked by what's happening, honestly. So we need to take action. So I'd be really happy if you manage to make a few 100,000 thanks to our videos. Getting a positive return would be absolutely awesome. I don't want anything from you, not even a thank you, but I would love it if, once in a while, when you get a really high return, you invest part of it in, for example, charities or nature or animal welfare. That would be absolutely fantastic, then we're contributing to a better world. Let's take a look at some other ETFs as an update, and also at some other portfolios. I've now opened the second DEGIRO account, and here in the overview we can see the transactions from the past month. Well, it has a number of stocks, but we're not going to talk about those in this update. That's for the next update about the stock portfolio, and that's next week. Right now, we're going to talk about the ETFs, and over the past month, I've really only added small extra positions in the China Internet ETF. It dropped a bit, so I bought some extra. I have multiple portfolios, that's 111 piles of money, and I think in percentages. So I buy more to let certain percentages rise to the level I want. And typically, for a thematic ETF, I personally would keep a maximum of 10% for one. You can also just invest 100% in a global ETF. That's totally fine. It's just that thematic ETFs are riskier. More about momentum, that kind of thing. So 10 to 20% might be advisable. Personally, I do 10% because I also have quite a few stocks in my portfolio where I want to invest less as well. We see the CraneShares China Internet ETF, which I've had in my portfolio for a while now. However, I had it in dollars. I sold it and switched to euros because that saves on transaction costs. I did that during the transition to MEXEM, so we don't really see any special update here. Where we do see a notable update compared to last month is a significant price increase in the uranium miners ETF. In the last video about 3 unknown ETFs, I gave detailed information about why this ETF, and why miners instead of uranium in general. It has gone up significantly, so the ticker is U308. I just need to check if it was a 0 or an 8. Yeah, so the story is, I've had uranium for a while now. Since 2023, it's actually gone up quite a bit, by about 60% or more if you look at it in April. But as you can see, there's also been a huge price drop of about minus 35%. After that, it recovered, then dropped minus 40%. Well, I bought my first position here in March at around a price level of 7. I had sold, then bought again in 2024 somewhere here in March, and once more, but unfortunately a bit less. Bought more around the price level of 6. The momentum is now starting to slow down, which makes sense. If it manages to break through to, for example, the last all-time high, it's still up 25%. I think uranium is interesting for the very long term. But it's going to take about 5 to maybe even 7 years before there's really a squeeze on the supply chain. So that tension between supply and demand, where demand becomes greater than supply and supply just kind of stagnates while demand keeps increasing. So at a certain point, that gap just gets really big and prices go up. And with miners, you create a kind of leverage effect, just like with gold. Just look at the gold price, it's gone up a lot. After that, gold miners followed, and now they're rising a lot too. Speaking of which, gold might also be a very interesting ETF at the moment. For example, the Van Eck Gold Miners. The ETF is available at DEGIRO. As you can see, it's rising sharply, but it could go up a bit more. Purely based on some charts. I don't know how far gold will really go up, because I'm not a fan of gold, and as you can see, it's very cyclical. But right now, there are a number of gold stocks, so companies, and then miners, that are in a really good position. So if all of those are included in those ETFs, then of course more money will flow in and the ETF will rise as well, or vice versa. The ETF can also give a boost to individual stocks. Finally, a quick overview of the ETFs within the Maximum portfolio, but nothing new here. We have two of them. First, the one here with the ISH oil and gas. The ticker here is a bit different OGP and not IS0D, but they're the same ETFs. Simply a different ticker. What's the difference? Well, the IS0D I showed on DEGIRO was in euro currency. This ticker here is in USD, and I did that because the dollar has dropped a bit compared to the euro. So you can hopefully buy in a bit cheaper. Hopefully gain some currency advantage, but also, the transaction costs are just much lower at Maxim for dollars. So maybe two birds with one stone? We'll see. At the moment, the ETF, including this one, has dropped significantly in a single day. That's why it's suddenly at minus 1,000 euros in just one day, but the total rate of return is still a yield of 6.7%. And overall, I'm still at about, 1,600 euros. No reason to panic just yet, it can still drop quite a bit, though. But I'm not planning to buy anymore. With ETFs, you need to have patience anyway, and I've bought all the ETFs in the portfolio for the next 12 months. And only after 12 months will I decide how things are going. The losers either have to have become really cheap but still have good prospects. If those prospects have worsened, then I'll sell. Have the winners risen too much, so are they overvalued? Then I'll sell after 12 months. Or I'll set a stop loss and just let my winners run. Because sometimes you can't know, but it happens that the market just has a lot of interest in certain themes and things can become highly overvalued. Or, it's not overvalued and the future growth keeps exceeding expectations. It's better to just accept that investing is actually quite complex, because there are so many factors at play that it's better to just think, I don't really know for sure. So I use techniques that allow me to still achieve returns, whether I know or don't know what's going to happen. And one of those ways is a stop loss. But this is an advanced technique, and in our course at Happy Investors I go into much more detail about how you can apply it. For the other portfolio regarding ETFs, we actually only see one ticker. And that ticker looks a bit strange. But that's not the ticker we see here on the screen. I'll open it up for a moment, and the ticker is indeed from Greece. GRE1. But this is just the same ETF as the ticker GRE. We've already seen that one in our portfolio, namely at DEGIRO. Yes, this is actually the same ETF. It's just that I also have it in my business portfolio, because this is the business portfolio at Maxim. In the Netherlands, there are still very few brokers where you can invest as a business, and one of the few is Maxim. I also think it's one of the best choices, or actually the best choice if you ask me. But another advantage is that they also have Dutch customer service, so if you want to open a business portfolio you have to fill out all these pretty complicated forms, and they can help you with that. I did this manually myself at Interactive Brokers last year, but then I switched to Maxim. And we see a total return of 7.3% at the moment, so that's not bad for a relatively short period since I bought the ETF. And you can see a line here with several tens of thousands at a price level of 1.94. I was hoping it would drop to this level so I could buy quite a bit more. But as you can see, the price ended at 1.97 and not quite at 1.94, so the automatic order I set up here wasn't triggered. But it's still active. It's quite possible that the ETF will come back to this level of 2.1 and then, after that, start to drop again. Because the ETF has risen 30% in just 6 months. It's quite possible that, yes, a sort of top forms here for a while and then the momentum starts to fade again. Or that something just happens with Trump, with new tariffs, or who knows what else could happen. It's better to position myself for luck and patiently wait until big opportunities arise. If you're sure there are big opportunities, then you can go in big again. At DEGIRO, you saw that there was relatively little cash in the portfolio, but that's because I actually have quite a lot of cash in total. It's just that I'm building up the cash reserves in a Maximum account. Here you see excess liquidity, in other words, a surplus cash position of about 20k. And here we have a cash position of 40,000 euros at the moment. On top of that, I know there will be future cash flows coming in from both personal and business sources, which will make the cash position even higher. That's why I've actually bought more over the past few months. Especially in stocks, which will be the topic of the next update. And that's because if your cash position gets too big, yeah, you shouldn't try to time the market too much. I think it's just not super interesting right now to invest a lot. But if you hold too much cash in your own, and the stock market goes up over the next 5 years, then you won't get any returns. You end up buying in at a higher price. And yeah, that's obviously a real shame. So capital allocation is a thing in itself. You have to grow into that. You have to think about it. You need to be able to play with stocks, bonds, and possibly cash. And yes, that's also another factor within your investment strategy to help increase your returns. That was the update on the ETF portfolio. The only ones we haven't discussed yet are 2 ETFs, namely the ones from Poland. That one could be interesting. I'm currently keeping an eye on it. The ticker is Apple and ESPO. That's video gaming and esports. Of course, there's a lot of Nvidia in there, but I think also ASML. I still need to do some proper research because I've been following ESPO for a very long time. But of course, those holdings do fluctuate from time to time. And with Apple, it's basically just a matter of waiting until hopefully the price starts to drop. For example, you could also look at the NACD, that's the chart down below. It's starting to cross now. That means the momentum is starting to reverse, and the statistics as well. So it could very well be that this ETF starts to drop a lot in the short term. But the same goes for these other ETFs. Yeah, Greece is starting to rise again. Spain is also starting to lose a bit of momentum now. It's just a question of whether that momentum is really decreasing. And then you can simply see relatively quick price drops. And a minus 10% is nothing at all for a thematic ETF. So be patient. Don't panic. Use this short-term price drop as an opportunity to buy more. That was it for the questions about the ETF portfolio. Let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help you further, and see you next time.